The abandoned Krusty the Clown studio had been sealed for 3 years when Art and Lisa first heard the sounds. Not the familiar chaos of Springfield's daily dysfunction, but something far more methodical, a rhythmic scratching that seemed to emanate from beneath the cracked foundation. Lisa adjusted her saxophone case as they approached the building's rear entrance. The structure itself appeared to breathe in the afternoon light, its walls expanding and contracting with an almost organic pulse. Paint peeled in perfect spirals, revealing underneath layers of color that shouldn't exist, hues that made her eyes water when she stared too long. "You sure about this, Liz?" Art's usual bravado carried a tremor he couldn't quite suppress. The scratching had grown louder as they approached, accompanied now by what sounded like muffled laughter played at the wrong speed. The basement door hung open, though neither remembered seeing it that way before. The darkness beyond wasn't merely. The absence of light, it possessed weight, density, an almost tangible quality that seemed to resist their flashlight beams. The stairs descended far deeper than any building in Springfield should allow. Lisa counted 137 steps before losing track, her mathematical mind reeling at the geometric impossibility. The walls began to curve inward, forming a spiral that defied the rectangular foundation they'd seen from above. Bart's flashlight illuminated scratches in the concrete, not random marks, but deliberate patterns that repeated with obsessive precision. Circles within circles, each containing smaller iterations of the same design, spiraling inward toward a center that hurt to contemplate. "Look at this," Lisa whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the narrow space. Her beam caught something. Embedded in the wall, a fragment of red fabric, the kind used for Krusty's costume. But as she pulled it free, the material felt wrong against her fingers, too smooth, too warm, as if it had been recently worn. The laughter grew stronger now, not the boisterous guffaws of children's television, but something wet and labored. As if emerging from a throat filled with liquid, they emerged into a circular chamber that shouldn't exist beneath the studio. The walls were lined with niches, each containing what appeared to be a Krusty puppet, but these weren't the cheerful merchandise sold in stores. These figures had been stretched, their limbs extended to impossible lengths, their faces frozen, in expressions of perpetual agony disguised as mirth. Lisa's analytical mind tried to process what she was seeing. The puppets' eyes tracked their movement, following them as they walked the chamber's perimeter. Their mouths hung open and silent, screams showing not the painted interior of fabric constructions, but what appeared to be actual throats disappearing into darkness. "They're breathing," Art said, his voice barely a whisper, and they were the slightest rise and fall of their chests. So subtle, it might have been imagination, if not for the synchronized pattern that connected all of them in a single massive respiratory system dotted the chamber's center. A spiral staircase descended even further. The iron steps were worn smooth, as if countless feet had traveled this path. The scratching sound intensified, now clearly coming from below, accompanied by the sound of something large moving through confined spaces. The final descent opened into a vast cavern that couldn't possibly exist beneath. Springfield, the space, stretched beyond their flashlight beams, filled with an intricate network of tunnels and passages that honeycombed the earth like a massive hive. But it was the movement that froze their blood. Something immense writhed through the tunnels, not a single creature, but a concatenation of forms that had once been separate. Arms and legs emerged from cracks in the walls at impossible angles, all belonging to figures in various stages of Krusty costume decay. The red fabric had fused with flesh, creating a hybrid creature that was part entertainer, part something far more ancient and hungry. The laughter wasn't coming from mouths anymore. It bubbled up from the very walls themselves, as if the earth had learned to mimic human joy and gotten it horribly wrong. Each tunnel mouth exhaled the sound, creating a chorus that reverberated through their bones. Lisa's flashlight caught the creature's core, a mass of writhing performers, their bodies grotesquely elongated, stretched through the tunnel system, like a nervous system of suffering. Their faces, still painted in Krusty's signature makeup, had been worn smooth by constant friction against stone, creating mask-like visages that shifted between comedy and terror. It's still performing, Lisa realized with dawning horror. It never stopped. It's been down here for years, putting on shows for an audience that doesn't exist. The creature had noticed them now. Its many limbs began to coordinate, pulling its distributed mass toward their position with the fluid motion of something that had long ago transcended normal anatomy. The tunnels rang with approaching footsteps, not the slap of shoes on stone, but the wet sound of flesh that had learned to function as feet. Bart grabbed Lisa's arm, but she stood transfixed, watching as the creature's performance began. The elongated limbs moved in perfect choreography, executing Krusty's classic routines with mechanical precision. Pie-throwing motions with hands that held no pies. Banana peel gags performed by feet that had long since lost their shoes. All while the endless laughter provided a soundtrack of decomposing mirth. "We have to go," Bart said, but his sister was already backing toward the stairs, her scientific mind finally accepting what her eyes were showing her. They ran up the spiral staircase as the creature followed, its distributed body flowing through the tunnel system with liquid efficiency. The puppet gallery watched their ascent with glass eyes that reflected their flashlight beams like stars. Behind them, the performance continued, a show that had been running for years with no intermission, no final curtain, only the endless repetition of joy that had curdled into something monstrous. They emerged from the basement as the sun was setting, the normal world of Springfield appearing almost impossibly bright and clean after the depths they'd witnessed. The door slammed shut behind them, but the scratching sound continued, fainter now, but still audible to those who knew to listen. That night, and for many nights after, Lisa would wake to the sound of distant laughter. Not the creature's tormented performance, but something else, the slow, methodical sound of something learning to mimic human joy by studying them through the floorboards. Art never spoke of what they'd seen, but he stopped watching television. The sight of any performer, any entertainer trying to make people laugh, would send him into trembling silence. He'd learned something fundamental about the nature of performance, about the hunger that drove the need to create joy in others, and how that hunger could grow into something that consumed everything in its path. The Krusty studio remained abandoned, but sometimes, late at night, residents of Springfield reported hearing faint applause coming from beneath the ground. And occasionally, very occasionally, someone would report seeing a figure in a red nose and oversized shoes walking the streets after midnight, its movements too fluid, its limbs too long, still performing for an audience that could never truly appreciate the dedication of its craft. The show, after all, must go on, forever.